There's an absolute ton that Helldivers 2 doesn't tell you. Me and you've been playing for a good few days now, and even as we put this particular video together, we're finding all sorts of things that the game literally doesn't tell you whatsoever. I kind of like it. I quite like the idea of a game blowing up where so many people are encouraged to share tips, tricks, etc. And I wonder how much of that stuff was baked into the design. A co-op game where you must talk to people.
It makes sense. We're all learning and dying like Helldivers. We're diving in, we're filling those holes, dying in the holes, getting crushed by things. You know, it makes sense that it doesn't tell us everything that, you know, we would need because, you know, Super Earth, it's, you know, I mean, not that I'm going to criticize Super Earth or anything. We're all there for, you know, to save managed democracy and everything.
Democracy, sir.
But, you know, I'm just saying there are some things you have to learn as a Helldiver on your own unless you want to get melted repeatedly. Although that is part of the learning experience too.
All of it is in favor of Helldivers 2 because I'm Scott.
I'm Ewan.
And this is Helldivers 2, 13 tips and tricks the game doesn't tell you. Number 13, hold reload to change weapon properties. This is something that we realized a few matches in, but if you literally hold square on PlayStation, it brings up a weapon menu. And I really like this for the sake of the machine gun. You can make it even faster. You can make it fire like 900 RPM or something.
You can go from dooga to
and just fully take out some of the bigger dudes. And a lot of the bigger dudes, the ones that charge you, it's pretty much one machine gun clip that seems to take them down anyway. So the faster you can do that, the better when you're being swarmed.
Yeah, no, totally. It's one of those where you want to make sure that you have your best, most favored build on. Say if you get annoyed by the flashlight, you can just turn it off, or you want to keep the laser on, you can have that too. It's really, really handy, I think, for this. You want to make sure that you have your best build ready to go as soon as you drop in and get bugs squishing.
Also, you can assign a button to switch shoulders when aiming. You have to go into the game's controller settings, go to settings, bindings, combat, and switch camera side, and then you can aim and click a button to switch which shoulder you're aiming over. Also, while you're aiming, you can click the right stick to go into first person. The game does show this at different points, but it's worth just knowing that if you're using maybe one of the longer range rifles or something and you want to get a bead on a particular bug's head.
Number 12, the grenade launcher plugs nests.
Yeah, it does.
I love plug-in nests. We kind of called Helldivers Holdivers for a while because we just keep on, I'm going to have to stop doing that because it's really funny and also a bit dodgy. But at the same time, if you are going on a map, there's some certain missions in Helldivers 2 that are built around basically taking down Terminid structures, which will have a lot of nests involved. Some little nests only have like 4 or 3 holes. But if you go with the big nest, sometimes they can have 12 holes. And if you're just like a 2-man squad, you're not going to have enough grenades to fill those holes. So if you take the grenade launcher, not only will you be able to blast those holes from further away, but you'll actually have more of a chance of getting the nest. So yeah, take the grenade launcher if you feel like you need to plug those holes and nests, because
it's very hard to not keep saying plug.
Stop talking about your holes.
Number 11, how to prevent a bug breach. This is a thing that has dogged or is dogging the Helldivers community at large, where you're about to finish a mission and a bug breach kicks off. And you maybe haven't realized that a patrol is just around the corner that's noticed you. You can eliminate the patrols from afar using some of the ordnance drops that do the most damage from the most distance, as well as noticing that certain enemy types are the ones that notify the nest overall. It's the small green and red boys.
The little fellas.
The little fellas, as well as the ones that seem like smaller versions of the stalker enemies, the ones with the big claws, the ones that hit you and slow you down. If you wipe them out, they won't be able to notify the rest of the bug nest in general. But just be aware of patrols. Be aware of the AI scripts that are going on. Chances are you're about to be noticed by some patrolling enemy, and the amount of times that me and you especially have been jumped from behind in this game, it's always worth just trying to keep a bead on in all directions and rain down fire as much as possible.
Yeah, it's good to emphasize that stealth is a valid tactic here as well. If you feel like there is a patrol near you that you don't have to go deal with, or you think there's too many bugs involved, just ignore them, let them go about their day. I'm not saying don't squish the bugs. We all want to squish some bugs, but at the same time, pick your battles well. And also, if you do see a patrol or you think that you see some bugs in the distance, make sure you can see every enemy in that patrol before you start firing. Otherwise, you're gonna get a bug breach.
That's a very good point.
Number 10, samples get shared. So one of the big currencies in Helldivers 2 are samples. These are the things you use to upgrade your ship itself. The requisition slips are what you use to get the stratagems. The medals are what you use to go through the battle passes that you get there, the war bonds rather. And the samples themselves, the things that you pick up on missions. So when you start out on the lower difficulties, you'll be able to get common samples. You'll find those around the map. And when you level up, you also get the more, the rarer samples. So those are used to upgrade really cool things. You can get like quicker cooldowns on certain drops, more ammo for certain pickups. So it's really, really good. The thing that you want to make sure that you're doing, though, is that when your Helldiver friend dies, is to make sure that you pick up their samples, because these resources are shared for everyone in the lobby. So if you're completely overwhelmed by a swarm and you think that you might have a chance of getting that sample, it's probably worth risking the opportunity of death just to make sure that you can get it, because those upgrades are really, really valuable, and you don't want to be going in and out of missions repeatedly and not coming back with your samples.
You can kind of relay race it a little bit to the extraction as well. We sort of tag-teamed a rare sample from one of the bug nests all the way back to the ship at the very end of the mission, just dying, carrying it a bit further until we eventually extracted with it. Number 9, armor and weapons have stats and buffs. This is obviously visible if you go in the game's armory and bring up the weapons that you got. You can inspect them, you can go on the armor itself. But I feel like it's just worth pointing this stuff out, that the likes of heavy armor comes with a specific buff that says, it'll be phrased something like a chance to survive lethal damage. There's a clip that's doing the rounds in regards to Helldivers 2, at least on X, showing someone diving in the way of a straight up shell.
Doing the bodyguard move.
Yeah, doing the full-on dive in the way Max Payne style thing, and you can survive that. If you have the specific armor equipped, but the scout as well comes with the ability to tag more enemies at a greater range. Like, it's better used with the map. It's just worth keeping in mind the different armor sets and the weapons that you've got and the statistics that come alongside them.
Yeah, so the first scout armor, that's actually the first tier of the normal war bonds that you can get on that one. There are better ones that you go further down, but definitely make sure you are paying attention. I was a nerd and bought the premium war bond thingy because I really like the guy with like half his limbs missing.
Yes.
Because he's got metal limbs, he can actually throw the stratagems even further and takes less limb damage. So these are all things that you should pay attention to when you're crafting your ideal Helldiver build.
Also, it's worth keeping in mind armored enemies look for weapons that do armor-piercing damage. The chargers, I think they're the same enemies that spew stuff at you.
Those are different. So you have the chargers, which have the big armor on the front. The railgun eats through those guys, as does the recoilless rifle. We've got some great footage of me here playing and just absolutely laying waste to one just before it crushed us. And also the auto cannon, that does really good as well. But make sure that you're like using those heavy weapons to chip away damage. One of my ideal strategies at the minute is that I take the Magnum revolver with me, which is a high caliber. I believe it can penetrate either light or medium armor. So if I'm coming up against a lot of people, I'm just squishing them with the shotgun. But if someone with armor comes up towards me, if they're a littler armored enemy, I can use the revolver to pierce them and then finish them off with the shotgun. Number 8, artillery station tips. So if you've been going around in Helldivers, you've probably noticed one of those big guns doing the rounds on the map. Those are the artillery stations, and they're more than just a side objective for you to pick up. They can actually benefit you in unique ways. You want to make sure that you get these if you come across them, if you have the time, of course, because if you're doing that very late in the game, you won't be able to use a stratagem anyway because those disappear when you get to the end. But one thing that you should pay attention to with these are the kinds of shells that you load, because you have different kinds. You have the mini nuke available, napalm, regular explosive, high explosive, and static field and EMP. So these are all different unique shell abilities. You'll be familiar with them because they're also the different kinds of eagle strikes that you can call in, or orbital strikes, and each one affects gameplay in unique ways. So make sure that you're picking the shells that you most want.
Yeah, also these things fire in the order that you load them into the cannon, and they fire in the group that they're loaded in as well. So if you put 3 napalm shells in a row, when you actually use the stratagem to fire the cannon, it'll fire all 3, and then it'll do, say, 1 next thing or 2 other shells or whatever. The cannon fires in groups, basically, so you want to load it in the way that you would like to then fire upon the enemy. Also,
make sure you're looking after the guy who's carrying the shells, because that's backbreaking work, and you don't want to get clawed in the butt when you're doing that.
Actually, I'll tell you another thing that I noticed, which they might have patched this by the time, as we're recording this, it was true. If you just mash the button to drop and then pick up the shell itself over and over again, you can drop and run after it and drop and run after it, which lets you get across the the map a lot faster than you would at the slow crawl speed of carrying a shell normally. Hopefully they haven't patched that, though.
I like your thinking, Helldiver.
Number 7, the game has a ping system. The game did not tell me this thing. If you just tap R1, you can do the Apex Legends idea of just pinging stuff on the map. And the game does recognize whatever you're aiming at, whether it be enemies, ammo, weapons, a radar, whatever. It's just worth knowing that if you're not playing, say you're not playing online, you're not talking to other players, and you want to take advantage of a system like this, the game does have it. I feel like I've seen quite a lot of posts saying, where is the game's ping system? I didn't just notice it by going on the controller bindings, and it just is sat there. You can hold R1 for remotes, or you can tap it to do the ping thing. So super simple, but super effective.
It's really intuitive. If if maybe you don't feel like talking to people and you're just matchmaking with randoms and you feel more comfortable this way, it's really good because if you see a patrol and you tap R1, your guy will go patrol here. If you see a big nest, it'll go terminid nest here. So it's really, really helpful. Take advantage of those pings. And even do it if you're talking to people because the sense of direction and everything. This is a third-person game, so even though you do have a decent FOV, it can be difficult to lose track of stuff. So definitely take advantage of those pings.
Yeah, man.
Number 6, prioritize radar stations to unlock more map points. So following up the artillery point before, one of the other side mission types that you can get in Helldivers 2 are radar stations. Now, these actually have a unique benefit, which isn't particularly, well telegraphed in the game itself. If you complete these radar stations, and you should, because we're all serving managed democracy and those optional objectives will help us crush the bug threat.
True.
They will actually highlight all the points of interest on the map where you get those unique bonuses, like the drops where you go and salute them. So you can get bonus weapons from there. You also get premium currency from there, medals, samples. So definitely make sure that you're going and doing those radar stations and exploring them, because basically you'll get way more out of a given mission than you would otherwise.
Yeah, the risk always increases the more time you spend down on the planet, but you want to try and come away with as many items as possible. I'll also throw in that on higher difficulties, the game will obscure your vision with lots of different, what looks like spore clouds, different clouds in general. They come from a giant literal mushroom that you can then find. Like I said, it's only on certain difficulties, but if you can find the giant mushroom itself and destroy it, you'll restore the map. Just something worth pointing out in regards to points on the map.
Additional fun tip on the mushroom point, if you're like me and you're planning your route on a given map, if you ping certain red spots thinking, oh, there's a nest we can clear up there, if you happen to hover over a red spot that is the mushroom, it will ping directly and say that this is the mushroom here. So you can find that pretty easily as soon as you're on the ground.
Number 5, graphics optimizations on PS5. Again, by the time we're recording this, it might have been patched, things might have been cleared up anyway, but a lot of people are finding custom fixes to make the game look better. One of them being turning off depth of field, turning on anti-aliasing, turning motion blur all the way down, and upping the sharpness, pretty much maxing it out. I would also recommend reducing the game's HUD size so that you just have more, less screen real estate is taken up. We've all seen the Suicide Squad meme, and as much as Helldivers 2 is a drastically better game overall, it is just worth saying that you can end up with a lot of HUD creep in Helldivers 2 unless you manually go in and change things.
Yeah, I think I've reduced my HUD size to 1. I think that's the best way for me. It's still got all the information that I need, but it's not as boxy as it was before. And yeah, I turned in, when I jumped into Helldivers 2, initially I was like, still a great looking game, but certainly removing depth of field for me and upping the sharpness has made it way more clear, way more crisp, and I would definitely recommend doing that if you want to get the best visual experience. Number 4, Stratagem Combo. So on the surface, Helldivers 2 could look like a pretty kind of not particularly deep co-op experience, but I'm telling you, Scott Tailford, this thing has a lot of depth, like a cavernous bug nest. You can go really far in here. My biggest tip from having played over 24 hours already
on the thing.
Is to make sure that you're coordinating your loadouts and stratagems with your teammates. It helps no one if you're carrying the same sort of stuff, because certain builds will excel at different jobs. One combo that I found is particularly helpful at the minute is the EMS strike. So that is this. It functions the same as an orbital strike, the one that you get at the beginning, but instead of just blasting them, it freezes them in place. So if you come up against a charger who are notorious and they have their weak spot on their back and their legs once you chip away the armor, by calling that in, you could then follow that up with an orbital strike and actually deal with the threat very, very quickly. It's very good at holding advances, but basically make sure that you're taking advantage of the breadth of abilities on offer here, because you don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. Otherwise, you're going to be left with a squad that doesn't excel. It doesn't excel in areas that you need it to. So the thing that I'm doing at the minute is focusing on area denial. So I rock the flamethrower. I'll bring a sentry with me. I'll bring napalm, maybe the EMS strike, maybe the gas strike, which I unlocked yesterday, which is loads of fun. And I try and control those different places. So yeah, definitely just have a mess around with what the game has to offer and try and find your ideal build. But at the same time, make sure that you're paying attention to the mission objectives, because you don't want to be hunting a Bile Titan and and no one has any explosives to deal with it. But yeah, make sure that you're coordinating with your teammates.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because also it's pretty easy to miss the computer terminals that you can interact with when you first get on your ship, before you get to the armory ones, the ones that are before then, but that include the ship modules and unlock the different stratagems and everything. Just keep an eye on that entire rollout of potential abilities and plan ahead for a build that would do the most damage, especially in coordination with the team that you've got. Number 3, plan your route before dropping. We mentioned before that there are all sorts of different points on the map. There are all sorts of different, let's call them side missions or little side things that you might want to do. It's worth just trying to plan things out in regards to exactly where you're going to drop and just making sure you can combo as many different parts of the game map together. So you actually extract with everything. Then don't get shot in the side of the head as you're trying to make it out with all the different rare samples and super points and everything else that you've got until that point.
Yeah, it's really good, especially because certain objectives require that you hit them first before you do the second one. I believe the ICBM missions, they require you to get the launch codes before you then go back to the actual missile itself to unlock that. And then, so yeah, pay attention to where the side missions are. Make sure that you're dropping things in a way that means you don't have to double back on yourself if you can avoid it. Try and take a certain route forward and up towards the objective or down. Basically, try and hit as many things on your way to that point as is feasible. Obviously, paying attention to the timer, because if you do that wrong, you could be left high and dry with no reinforcements, and well, we thank you for your service.
That's the thing. It is worth saying that the timer in the top right of the screen is only for stratagems. Obviously, they're essential to the game, but the game doesn't end when you run out of time. It just means that you don't get support from above anymore.
Which could be really bad if you're left with like 5 minutes on an eagle extract, and then you're just kind of there, like, or pelican extract. You're just kind of there being like, I have nothing. I've got nothing left. Number 2, use the SOS Drop Pod to kill if you're out of stratagems. So, as Scott Tailford so brilliantly demonstrated on his first evening on Helldivers 2 with me,
very well,
you can use drop pods to kill things. Obviously, the SOS drop is the thing that you can throw down to summon, when the matchmaking is working, other players to your session.
Yes.
But one thing that is worth bearing in mind is that because all drop pods are lethal projectiles, you can save that thing and drop it on something and it will get squished, which is really, really handy because you get one. So if you've gone through all your other stratagems, make sure that you had that SOS one in your back pocket to throw down to get you out in a pinch. The other important thing that I would say here is that when you're reinforcing your teammates to get them to come in, try and drop them near where the enemies are. That's not to say to drop them in the middle of a disaster zone or anything, but if you're being chased by a charger, it can be helpful to have that drop pod near you so that they can land in and crush one of them. I've done that so many times now, and it's very, very effective.
Yeah, man, the reinforcement stratagem is never on cooldown. It's always available as long as someone has died. So just think about the reality of why you're bringing someone back, when you're bringing someone back, and maybe tell them, if you can, to actually aim for the thing that's bearing down on you. I recommend killing a Bile Titan with one. It's fun.
Yeah, I'd also recommend to run when you're calling those in and not to stand still and get clawed to death. Because again, not a good idea. Gonna get you killed.
And number 1, the Dead Man's Switch. This is my favorite thing that I found out about this game, that you can activate stratagems. Obviously, you punch in the different directions, you activate the stratagem, and then usually you would throw something to actually, trigger the drop itself. If you die while something is activated, it triggers anyway. So if you want to trigger something like a Hell Bomb, which is the game's ostensibly the equivalent of a nuke, or trigger something that is a, notably explosive and doing a lot of area damage, just put the little directions in and sprint into the middle of the bug nest.
You can literally reenact the bit in Terminator 2 when Dyson blows up. If you want to do the whole breathing thing as well, you can totally do that. Or you could be like the guy in Kong Skull Island and it goes really badly and it doesn't actually do anything. But yeah, definitely do that, especially because if you throw a stratagem, sometimes it can bounce off scenery and not go where you want to go. Best way of fixing that, giving your life for democracy.
The best way for succeeding as a Helldiver is to explode on the spot and take as many bugs with you as possible. But yeah, I'm a big fan of a Hail Mary play, as long as you have enough respawns to get the person back in the game afterwards. But yeah, always worth throwing in a Dead Man Switch in a game like this. Ultimately, we have a ton of tips and tricks, and as everybody keeps playing this game, every single day we'll find a hell of a lot more. Let us know your favorites down in the comments below, and hopefully you've enjoyed this rundown for now.